Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
As we move into 2025, I'm taking a moment to reflect on the guests that I shared with you last year and some of their experiences and lessons that they had for us all to learn. Now, the feedback that I got on several of them was really great, and so I'm going to replay them, just for you to take a listen to if you missed out, or even if you want to revisit again and learn more from these people. Here we go. Have fun, enjoy, and Happy New Year. If you know of anyone that currently suffers from ADHD, anxiety, poor health, stomach problems, stress, overwhelm, amongst many other symptoms, then today's show is for you. For the last 40 years, one of my greatest passions is understanding personalities and helping people to find out who they are in order to understand themselves and others. Today, we're going to discuss my second greatest passion, what we're feeding ourselves and our children, and how today's foods are making us sick. As adults, parents and grandparents, most of us don't realise how many preservatives, food additives and food colourings are in our food, and the devastating damage that these can have on our minds and our bodies. We're not living back in the time of our grandparents or even our parents, when food was food. It often went off in a day, there were limited choices, and much of it was homegrown, homemade and simple. Slowly over time, more additives, preservatives and food colourings have crept into our foods. They help food last longer. They make it tastier and more appealing to the eye, and their integration into our daily food intake is the biggest it has ever been. What we eat, drink and immerse our bodies in has a huge impact on both our mental and physical health. No matter where you live in the world, we all need to sit up and take notice, because this is affecting us all. My personal story began 18 years ago when my children were 10 and 12. They were chronic asthmatics. My husband had blinding headaches 2 or 3 times a week, and my son had just started getting migraines as well. My daughter was crying every night when she went to bed. Someone handed me an invitation to a talk in the local community centre, and I went and watched a woman called Sue Dengate talk. She changed my life. We all watched as Sue held up a bun from McDonald's that she had for 6 months, and it was still fresh. She then proceeded to teach us about all the additives, flavourings and food colourings that were in the foods that we were all eating. As I looked at the screen, I realised then and there that this was what was making my family sick. I went home that night and I threw every single thing out of my pantry and my fridge in order to get rid of every colouring, additive and preservative in the house. And then I started from scratch as I built up my new list of foods to feed myself and my family. As Sue Dengate had advised us to do, I followed the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital's allergy diet from then on, and my family's problems with their health literally cleared up immediately. Mood swings, headaches, shortness of breath all disappeared unless they eat the wrong food. I'm Kate Mason and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Today I'm talking to sisters Tracey and Jo. Together they created Sister Mixin', which has now grown to become Additive Free Lifestyle. They're passionate about changing the way that you look at food by spreading the message that additives and preservatives can be toxic to your health. Their mission is to educate everyone they can on exactly what you're eating, what's in our food, and some of the harmful effects this can have on your health. Because knowledge is power. It doesn't mean you need to be perfect. It just means that you can make informed decisions rather than living blindly. Welcome to the show, Tracey and Jo. I'm so excited to have the pair of you on here because what you talk about is something I'm really passionate about.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's a pleasure. Now, Jo, I'm going to start with you because your journey is really interesting and it's very much the way that I started mine. So where did all of this start? What was happening in your life that created your journey into additives?
Okay, well, I'll try and keep it short, but our journey started in 2013. Our little girl, she was just 3 years old at the time, and I had a brand new baby as well. But my daughter, her behaviour was just, it was out of control. Like she was super, super hyperactive. My main concerns was that she was biting a lot. Like we couldn't get her to stop biting. She had really poor concentration to the point where just simple things to most people were really, really challenging, like reading her a book. She'd try and lash out and rip the pages. Like she just didn't want to sit still enough to read a book or watch a show, or even taking her to the park or out and about would end in a big, huge meltdown and tantrum. And it just got really stressful and just way too hard to leave the house in the end. I cancelled playgroup and a little music thing that we used to go to. And I just found that we were just staying at home more and more because it was just really difficult to go anywhere. And my background is early years education. So I actually worked in a kindergarten with a lot of 3 and 4 year olds. And I just knew that things were not right. So I did book her into a clinic to have some testing done for ADHD. And I thought maybe that was the route that I needed to go down and, suss some things out. And then not long after I made that appointment, there was a 5-month wait list to get into this clinic that I wanted to go to. And I was alerted to additives. And I was at a cooking demo one night and the lady making the custard, she said, just this little comment of, there's additive 102 can often be found in custard powder. And I don't really like to give it to my kids because it can be linked to behavioural issues. And I kind of had never heard of additives. Like I'd never heard of, I just thought food was food. I knew what junk food was. I knew what food was and sometimes food and, healthy food. But I never really realized that there were all of these other added products and ingredients in our food. And so I went home and I Googled 102 side effects. And I was pretty shocked with what I was reading. And it was pretty much everything that my daughter was experiencing. It was aggressive behavior, behavioral problems, ADHD-like symptoms, asthmatics should avoid it. We didn't have any skin irritations with her, but I did with my newborn, and skin irritations was another one, like sleeplessness, just all of these tick boxes. And that just led me on a path to keep researching. I just knew that I had to learn more. And so I just kept Googling and researching, and my husband was away for work at the time. And when he came home, I pretty much handed him this list at the front door and I said, look, I don't know if this is any of her problem, but it seems like all of these additives are linked to behavioral issues and hyperactivity, and maybe we should get rid of it and see what happens. And so we did. And it just completely changed our lives. And sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but the other thing that I realized was that she stopped getting so sick as well. And we were always at the doctor because she had something wrong. So she had constant repeated tonsillitis. She had a couple of ear infections. They weren't too bad. She had a lot of bronchial problems. We were in and out of the emergency department with her wheeze, that they called it at that age, which then did get diagnosed into asthma. There were so many other things that I didn't even realize I could help, which completely just helped as well. So life-changing.
No, that's fantastic. So the thing is, how quickly, once you'd taken those things out of her diet, how quickly did you see the reaction? Was it pretty fast?
It honestly felt like overnight. Like we we did go pretty cold turkey, but I look back now and I think actually we didn't, because there were still so many other things that we needed to change up as well. But we started with food, and my husband and I, we went to the pantry and fridge and freezer, and we did throw out anything that contained an additive that I'd found on the internet, like my list that I made. And yeah, we were pretty shocked. We threw out 2 garbage bags full of food, and we thought we had a healthy diet. Like, we ate meat and veg for dinner, and we just lived a normal lifestyle that we grew up on. But I had no idea that the ingredients in the spreads that I was using, or the ice cream, or the wraps, or the bread, or so many products we were eating was just filled with additives that were really hindering all of us, not just my daughter.
And you don't really realize until, I mean, the thing is, the most important thing was you took away something that was just a comment from someone, and you took the time to dive into that, which is something that I did with my kids too when they were younger. I went and saw someone speak, and I did exactly what you did. I threw out everything, came home, ditched everything. And that was, I saw immediate effects too, to my children and my husband, who's very food colouring sensitive. And so to take that on board is really good, because what I find, and I don't know whether you do too, is a lot of people actually question the results that we have because there is no proof. So I did mine 18 years ago, right? My pantry clear out. So I was even further away from a time when people had a belief system around food colourings, and there was no one out there talking about it except this woman, Sue Dengate. So when people question, and you have those analytical people that go, where are the studies, particularly doctors? There's no studies around that. I talk about having arthritis, go see a specialist. Oh, no, there's no studies. It's not to do with the foods that you eat, etc. How do you handle that? Because it's quite stressful.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever really let it affect me, because I think that I know what we're doing is the best for our family. So it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. I certainly had a lot of people judge me, and mostly close family and friends as well. I'm sure there was some strangers, because I had started a Facebook page and I was sharing some recipes, but mainly it was those people really around me that had a lot to say. But we just kept doing what was working for us, and it didn't really matter what anyone else thought, to be honest. And I still don't care.
No. And have you found that the family have taken it on board, or they're still sitting back?
Yeah, well, Tracey, my sister.
Apart from Tracey. Woo.
Who we'll talk to in a minute. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, there's certainly people that I'm still very close to that don't want to live this way, and look, that's their business, and I don't hold any judgment against them, and they don't hold any judgment against me anymore, and we are all who we want to be.
We are, and I think the choices that we make are all really different, of course, and everybody has different belief systems. I mean, my thing was that there was no actual people. The analytical people I talked to was, where's the evidence? Where are the studies?
Yeah.
And people haven't done, only just recently, I think people have kind of got more studies out around that type of area. So for some people, it was woohoo, oh, there goes Kate, taking a family off all of this stuff, and who wants to eat at her house? It's quite a different thing. But the scary part is it's the things like little tiny teddies that I used to give my kids. I thought they were okay, and the vanilla ice cream. And all of a sudden you start looking into all of those products, even if you just got vanilla and it wasn't coloured ice cream, still has all of the preservatives and nattos and all that type of stuff sitting in it. So what I found really interesting about you girls was that, women, was that the stats that you give about additives, like food has changed so much over time. Like you talk about what did our grandparents have in their food? What did our parents even have in their food? I'm 62. I ate a pretty good diet in comparison today. So what's changed? And can you give us some of those stats on the additives and food company manufacturers, and that I was listening to you say the other day, and I was blown away about the money they're making.
The food industry, the additive food industry, just additives alone, Trace, remind me of this, but it was something like so many trillion dollars. Like the amount was so big that we actually didn't even know how to pronounce it. We're like, how many billion is that? Hold on, that's a trillion, I think. So it's a lot of $1 billion estimated by 2030, and it's already very, very high. So yeah, if you want to make a lot of money, go into the food additive market because you'll be set up. And I think to answer your question, what's changed is money and marketing and time poor. And, we're so marketed. Like, we've always had 24 hours in a day, no matter what generation we've lived in. And mum never used to work. Mums do work now. And times have changed, and time has gotten very short for a lot of families as well in different areas of the day and different areas of the week. And I think that priorities have changed. And I think that marketing has had a lot to do with that, with all of this convenient food. And that's what I was buying as well. Like, I wasn't making gravy from scratch because it was quicker to get the instant stuff from the tin. I was buying some processed biscuits and lunchbox snacks and making some myself, but we would have both options there because I didn't have time to make everything from scratch. I didn't cook a homemade breakfast. We ate cereal because it was easy and convenient. And I just think that, to answer the question, what's changed, I think just life and what's on the supermarket shelves. The first supermarket came into Australia in the 1930s, and really it was there to just supplement what we couldn't grow at home. And it was just, little, and like, it wasn't a big deal. And now you look at a supermarket and every single aisle has processed packet food.
Are your children comfortable and accustomed to eating that way now?
Mine are now.
Do you have any fights around it, with McDonald's or anything like that? Do you have any battles with them yet?
I don't.
Or are you still able to feed them the way?
We're not perfect. I try not to be super strict with the kids as they get older because I do want them to make their own choices and I want them to realize how their body feels. And I also feel the more I say no, the more they're going to rebel as well. I now have a teenager. That's her job, to do the opposite of what mum says.
Yes, that's right, to say no. Yep.
As we're recording this, it's just been, they've just finished school for the year, and there's, 28, 30 kids in my son's classroom, and I think he got a candy cane from every single one of them. And as much as I hate that, I can't control everything. And so what I can control is what I control at home. And what I can't control is what they do when they're out and about. I have got some hard no's, and they know that. Zupa Dupas and Qualshers at school is definitely one of them. So then we have alternatives at school that they can go and grab from the freezer. But at the end of the day, you can only control so much. And if I was going to stress about everything that they ate and did, it wouldn't be great. I just feel like, I'm sure people have different opinions because we do get a little bit of very tiny amount of feedback on our socials because we aren't strict enough. But at the end of the day, I've got to let them live and make their own choices as well.
Yeah, you do. You do. Tracey, how did it go down with your children?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hang on, let me just adjust my mic here. Mine were about 10 and 12 when we started living additive free, and we were really slow to adapt to the lifestyle. So I didn't go hardcore like Joe did, and I didn't necessarily need to from a behavioural point of view, or I didn't have asthma, they didn't have anything wrong with their skin. There was no health concern that I knew, like that I could physically see, I guess. But the more I learned about additives and how there's a long-term effect that is at play there, and there's a a long-term health risk that can be associated with a lot of additives. That's when my mind was like, oh, hold on a minute. I've taught my kids to be safe with so many things. We hold our hand when we cross the road. We wear a seatbelt in the car. We wear a helmet when we go outside, not on a push bike. We wear sunscreen, et cetera, et cetera. And I was not teaching them to have safe thoughts about food from that health perspective. And so when that sort of entered my head, I was like, all right, I need to educate these kids and again, we had some hard and fast no's from the start. And you mentioned McDonald's, and that was one of them. And we used to get McDonald's at least weekly. Like it was like the treat on the way home from dance lessons on a Friday night. And I remember vividly saying to my husband one Friday night, oh my God, I'm so glad, sarcastically, so glad I bought them McDonald's on the way home. Like, look at their behavior now, and not even twigging that they were related. I just was like, oh, now they're tired, and they're like not even connecting them until I kind of realized. So it definitely did affect my kids. I just wasn't connecting it. And as we started to remove things, and it was really simple swaps, and this is what I think is really important for people to understand, is the simple swaps. Like I started grating cheese instead of buying it in a bag. I changed the tomato paste to one in a glass jar instead of a squeegee tube. Same brands, just different amount of additives in them. Just really, really simple swaps like that. And so my kids didn't even notice half the time, like that there was a change. Like there was still tomato sauce, there was still chips, there was still chocolates. I just started making different choices. And I think that helped my family kind of go additive free. And but even for my husband, it took us, I was probably quicker on the bandwagon because I was learning the information. They had to then recycle it from me. Like, so they weren't learning it. They weren't interested in it. I was just the nagging wife, mother, parent person in the household.
Right.
But the more they understood it and the more they could see my passion behind it and my desire to keep them as healthy as possible, that I think was where a switch flipped for them as well. And even now, my eldest is 23, my youngest is 21, and look, they're far from perfect. I'm far from perfect, all of that, same as Jo. However, my eldest has bought a home. She's moved out with a boyfriend, and they live as additive free as they possibly can afford in their very tight budget. And even my youngest, who's pushed back the hardest out of everybody in my family, will still say, Mum, do you reckon this has additives in it? Like for some things, not everything, but for some things. So the message got through, and like Jo, we weren't super strict. We didn't go hardcore. There was no I don't know, whatever you want to sort of say, but like it was just, we just eased into it, I guess, and they
Yes.
learnt.
Yeah, because we can't control everything. Although I think when I went into it, I was a little more
Not at
in
all.
control to a degree. The behaviours and sicknesses of my family were dissipated almost instantly. But my kids are a step older. And what we have to remember too is that it's what we show that they actually eventually copy. Let me tell they sit there now at 28 and 30, and they are eating the right foods. They are, bone brothing. They are, I ferment stuff. They are right in on all of that. It's selling it to their partners that is the harder part, I think, for them. And my son is going out with a doctor, and doctors, only have about 20 hours of nutrition their whole course. And so there's no belief system in that area at all either. So it all has to be, and unfortunately, a lot of these people do have ill health that you sit there and you go, just let me get my hands on you. I could do something about this, but you can't because, it's not your role. You have to sit there and just wait until one day someone might say, oh, hey, listen, this is happening to me, because it is an amazing, I just sit there because I'm so passionate about it. I've just sat there over the last, God knows, 18 years or whatever, and just looked at how different things are and the differences in behaviours that are evident through artificial colourings and preservatives. Now, what
you asked before, sorry if I could circle back, you asked before about the food additive market. And I found the stats that Jo was we were trying to remember because I can't remember it all. And so the food color like the food color market, so just the food colors that you see in the supermarket that are added into foods, that market is set to reach $3,759,000,000 by 2027. So that's only a few years away. So $3,759,000,000. That's just in food colors. So that's just one element. And then you've got the whole food additive market, which Jo was saying before. And this is a number I actually don't even know how to pronounce. So I think it's 1,018,757,000,000 something ludicrous. It's just a ludicrous number. And that's by 2027 as well that's so much profit. If people think that the food industry cares about your health, they do not. They do not one little bit. And something else that I heard recently on Instagram, actually, I was watching Reels as you do, and you sit there and scroll for a little bit. And this lady popped up and I was like, that makes so much sense to me. She said, like, she was a food creator and she sells her own products. And of course, they have to charge a premium price because she's really careful what she puts into the product. And so they're meals that she must sell locally or whatever. And she said, if the food that you buy in the supermarket, they are looking for every way to make a profit. So they will choose the cheapest product they can to add in. They will choose the cheapest eggs, the cheapest flour. They're not in there to look after your health. They're in there just to give you a product that you will eat without any care. And so that touched with me as well. Like I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. And even then I started to go, actually, do you know what? There's choices that I can improve on again for my long-term health and the health of my family. So, and it is just some small swaps.
Yeah, it is. And if you keep it simple and you don't overwhelm yourself, that's a much better way to do it. So it is that. So can you just, before we finish up here, what I want to know is, I was listening about how they can put additives and food colorings in and say that they're natural flavorings and natural food colorings. Because my daughter's bought these gummies that are a medicine gummy, not anything else but medicine. And she showed me the label because they were red. And I said to her, why are you doing this? Why aren't you just taking the pill? Oh, they're really yummy. And she showed me the list of ingredients, and there was natural flavoring and natural coloring in there. And I just had listened to you guys. I said to her, throw them in the bin, get rid of them. So can you tell us just quickly about how unnatural all that natural is?
There's no rule in the Australian government. They don't set a rule around what people can write on packets to some degree. There are some. But when it comes to natural flavours, they deem that pretty much even if it's created in a factory, it can be classed as natural because they've had to create it from something, right, that has something. And so we even called the Food Standards Agency to clarify this, and they said they basically don't have any, there's no one checking like this. So a company can put the words natural flavours and it can still be a synthetic natural flavour.
So really?
So it can be still be created in a factory. So it can be like a cubic zirconia versus a diamond. Like it's still, cubic zirconia is still classic, still natural. It's still a natural item, but it's not a diamond. And so it's kind of like that. And so that's how they deem it. So when you see the words natural flavours, you have to be really cautious unless you really trust that company. Then I probably would still put them in down as probably synthetic and made in a factory. And this is where our health has gone wrong. Like there's so much made in a factory that is not grown in a backyard or grown on a farm or grown without pesticides or grown without herbicides or grown without chemicals in the ground and chemicals sprayed on them. And this is, we all sit here and go, oh, I wonder why cancer is so high. I wonder why everyone is sick. People literally are just dropping dead. Like, I don't say that to be morbid, but the reality is we are an incredibly sick society, an incredibly overweight society, diabetes, everything you can name comes back to the food we eat in some way, shape or form.
And unfortunately, as a doctor now, you can't be straight about being overweight or anything like that with people because it's, putting people down. So it's a really hard area to be in. And I also worked in early childhood. I was a reception teacher for many years. And my son is now a teacher. And honestly, the stories he tells when he comes home from school, and people say to me, maybe you missed it, Kate. You missed the behavioural issues, And I say to people, no, I didn't miss anything. I had a class of 34. There might be 1 or 2 kiddies in there who had a few problems. And maybe I did miss autism if the child was very quiet. However, my son's got kids running out of the classroom. He's got children throwing things. There's such a difference in behaviour. And, I was speaking to a sleep doctor, and he said, look, I would always come back to sleep. And I'm speaking to you, and I would always come back to food as well, before, for all of this stuff, before I started going to see specialists and before we did anything like, anything more. Because like you say too, you can't get into a specialist these days anyway to see about those things.
But even sleep is affected.
No, you can't.
Yes.
Even sleep is affected by the food we eat.
It is. My husband gets jumpy legs the minute he has anything that's got additives in it. So totally get that. It is.
I just want to touch on that as well, because after Halloween, I put a reel up to say that millions of families all over the world are going to be wondering why their kids are so naughty in the next couple of days, and not connect between the amount of lollies and candy they've had over Halloween and the amount of teachers that wrote into us that next day to say the kids were off their heads today.
Yeah.
I felt so sorry for the teachers the day after and the next day, because it takes it can take a while for it to get out of the system. And also, they're not just consuming a whole bunch on Halloween night. Generally, they're allowed a treat in their lunchbox the next day. And, these buckets of candies are lasting weeks in kids' homes. And but I was really shocked at how many teachers wrote in to say, I've had the worst day.
That is so sad. And it's such an indictment, like you say, of what's happening with our food today.
No.
Now, listen, I'd love to go on further, but I'm going to wrap up. But what I want you to know is that I downloaded your app. I want you to tell people whoever would like to tell people about your additive app. I actually used it the other day because my son is going through a bit of what I call a rebellious time with his food. He's out there drinking and having a good time. And he was sitting next to me eating this horrible pack of rice crackers that I just looked at. They were red chili something or other. And I said to him, hey, listen, shine this app on the side. And he did, and he said, oh, my goodness, this is so bad for me. But he kept eating them. And I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to finish the packet because I've started already. I might as well keep going. But it is an amazing app, and it is so great for people that really don't have any idea about what's in the foods that they're picking off the shelf. So could you just give us a quick rundown on the app and where people can find you? And it'll all be in the show notes anyway, but who would like to?
Absolutely. So you can find us on all the socials at Additive Free Lifestyle. So it's all one word. Facebook and Instagram is the main platforms we're on. We are a little bit on TikTok, but mostly Facebook and Instagram. And our app you can download from any app store, so Apple or Google Play. And you just search Additive Free Lifestyle and it should come up. And what it has is a scanner. So we're the only ones that we know of in the world that have this scanner ability, and you can scan an ingredients label. So there are others that scan a barcode, but a barcode doesn't give you a full ingredients listing. So it's really, really important to know the difference, what the ingredients are. So you scan an ingredients label and then it would come up and tell you how many additives it's detected. And then you can read about those additives and decide, like your son, if you want to keep eating them or not, or even purchase it in the first place. Because, money's hard to come by. Like we work really hard for our money, and I would prefer to spend it with companies that are doing the right thing and actually caring. So choose wisely. But yeah, the app's really, really cheap. It's free to download. You can trial it for the first 7 days. And if it's not for you, you can just, unsubscribe. And then, the app's like you can choose a couple of different subscriptions. It's all in the app, but, and it'll tell you what they are. And it's really amazing that you can scan a packet, scan a pop, whatever, and it'll tell you what additives are there.
Yep. And I love that if you visual, it's got the sad and happy faces on it. I think that's a really great thing as well. He just looked at all the sad faces that were all over it.
And we've had We've had really good feedback with children that are have any type of learning difficulties or autistic, or they can see, like you said, it's a really good visual for kids that maybe even can't read yet, like even little ones, to be like they can generally distinguish between those face pictures. So yeah, so it's a really good one for that too.
That's cool. Thank you both so much for joining me today. I really love talking to you, and there's so much more to talk about. But for those listening, please check it out. Really important. And if your children's having tantrums right now, that'd be a great thing to do. Thank you, girls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's time to get curious. Check out your pantry and your fridge. Scrutinise every bottle, can and packet for colourings, additives and preservatives. Look up what they are and how they can damage your health. Start cooking at home. Simple, basic ingredients. Let me know if you notice any changes in your family or yourself. Tracey and Jo will be joining me next week on episode 87 of Parenting and Personalities for part 2 about how to live an additive-free life. We'll be discussing Tracey's personal journey and the additives that were major issues for her and how she changed them and her life around. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about the podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.